All saints are warriors who have defeated the devil, yet the war did not always consist in open battles. In fact, very often a saint had to use his wit to outsmart the devil instead of fighting him openly. And St. Francis of Assisi was a champion at this type of warfare. I'm going to tell you a story of how St. Francis once caught the devil totally off guard, and I will teach you how you can do this in your life. It is a trick which always works. Once upon a time, St. Francis had just returned from beyond the seas and had with him as a companion Leonardo of Assisi, another friar who used to serve him. Of course, after a long walk, St. Francis became extremely tired. And since they had a donkey, the donkey was offered to him and he started riding the donkey, while the other brother, Leonardo, followed on foot. Of course, Leonardo was a good friar, but in moments like these, the person starts falling into the hands of the devil. When your body is physically tired, you have to be extra careful because you become more vulnerable to the attacks of the devil. And walking on a long road, tired, weary, the devil starts tempting Leonardo with a lot of thoughts of revolt, of pride against St. Francis, until finally he gave in to the temptation and thought to himself, Friar Francis is not of noble family. My family is superior to his in social status. And look, he is riding and I have to walk here leading his donkey on foot. Now this temptation came from the devil and St. Francis perceived it. Of course, there are many ways in which we can fight the devil, but to openly attack the devil is not always the best way. St. Francis could stop the brother, call his attention, and warn him of the temptation of the devil so that he would be on his guard. Or St. Francis could just pray and ask God to send an angel to expose the devil. Or St. Francis could do something which I'm sure most of us would like to do. When we find someone who is proud, we would like to scold that person to show him why he is wrong. Now, St. Francis didn't do any of these things. He played a trick on the devil. You see, when a person does something wrong, the person expects to be corrected, expects to be shouted at. And of course, the devil is waiting inside the person for this. The devil who's tempting the person already starts taking steps so that as soon as a person is corrected, he immediately has a series of justifications, a series of reasons why he was right and the superior was wrong. And the devil was already working on Friar Leonardo's soul so that in case St. Francis corrected him for his wrong attitude, he would have all sorts of excuses to show why he was right and St. Francis was wrong. But St. Francis knew better than to do that. Now, before I tell you what he did, I want you to know that this has a very important lesson for our lives. There is a way that we can play the same trick on someone who is going through the temptation of pride. Well, not exactly on the person, but on the devil inside the person. Before I teach you this, let us see what the saint did. At one moment, St. Francis stopped the donkey, dismounted, and looked at Leonard and said, Brother, it is not fitting that I should ride while you walk, because you are a much nobler and mightier in the world than I. Now, that is exactly what the devil was telling him. But when the friar heard the same words from St. Francis, he realized that it was a lie. He suddenly remembered that irrespective of how each of them lived in the world, as a friar, he owed this respect, he owed this kindness to St. Francis, his father and founder. Now he was caught off guard, but much more than him. The devil was caught off guard, because the devil is not used to words of humility. Whenever you have an act of extreme humility, like St. Francis just had, the devil gets bewildered. He does not know what to do. As a result, the temptation ceased immediately and the devil fled. Of course, Leonard, who was a good brother after all, as soon as he was free from the influence of the devil, he was filled with shame and wonder, and he threw himself at the feet of the holy man, acknowledged his fault, and asked for pardon. Now this has a very important lesson for us. It's quite probable that most of you who are hearing me right now, have some sort of authority in this world. Maybe you're a boss at work, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're an older brother or sister. But in any situation, you have somebody under you for whom you have certain responsibility. And in this valley of tears, it is very common that we find manifestations of pride, manifestations of revolt in those under us. What is the best way for us to expose this pride? The holiest and most infallible way to fight against pride in somebody is to make a very strong act of humility in your own heart when you see this pride. This makes the devil lose his power. And of course, it is not always recommended to do what St. Francis did. There are times when we are obliged to defend our honor. We are obliged to openly correct. But there are many other times, and it is very frequent, there are moments in our life where the best correction that we can give someone is to throw the devil off guard by a profound act of humility and humble yourself before the other person, whereby the person realizes how badly he has acted. Dr. Plinio Correa de Oliveira, the man who is a great inspirer of the Heralds of the Gospel, this great man taught us one of the most powerful ways to help someone overcome a defect is when you suffer at the hands of that person because of that very defect. Let's say that someone has a defect of losing his temper very easily, and this person yells at you. At that moment, if you can control yourself, not react, nor respond to him with angry words, but if you hold your peace and make a prayer to God, asking God to pardon him for the sin that he has just committed, and ask God to give him the grace to never again commit the same sin. Such a prayer is so strong before God that God is, so to say, helpless in refusing that request. In fact, many of the defects and vices that we see in people around us depend on us to solve them forever. If we have the courage and the patience to pardon them once, twice, and as much as necessary, and always asking God to pardon them, if we do that, God will give them the strength to win over this defect. And of course, God will reward us abundantly because we had, in such a certain way, a participation in God's work of conversion. Our Lord Jesus Christ died on the cross, shed his blood for that person. But if it was not for our apostolate, that blood might have been useless in that individual case of that person. He or she would have remained in sin. So we are cooperating in God's work when we do this, and God will bless us abundantly. Of course, there are moments in our life when the offense is not against us. There are people who offend the Catholic Church. There are people who dare speak against our Blessed Mother, against the saints. And of course, in these moments, God's honor demands that we do react, that we do defend our faith, that we don't take the offenses lying down. Because in this case, the offended person is not us, but God himself. But whenever it is a personal offense against us, and not an offense against God, not an offense against the church, we should turn the other cheek, as our Lord Jesus Christ taught in the gospel. I can almost hear many of you saying, "Brother, that's easy for you to say." Well, the truth is that's not that way. Even among us religious, we do have misunderstandings. And it's not always easy to stay calm and to forgive. But in such moments, the best, and I almost say The only solution is to have recourse to our Blessed Mother. Ask her the patience and courage to be able to forgive when it is the time to forgive, and to react when it is the right time to react. In fact, I would say if St. Francis did not have devotion to our Blessed Mother, he would not be the great saint that he is now. By the way, I would like to recommend that all of you who are hearing me now consecrate yourselves to the Blessed Virgin, so that by belonging to her, we may receive special graces that we would not receive, and thus be true heroes of patience and forgiveness. For those who would like to do so, I will leave a link in the description below. But before we end, let me warn you to not have a one-sided view of St. Francis. Patience was just one of the virtues that he practiced. This was not his main virtue, nor the virtue that led to his conversion. Can you guess what the virtue that caused St. Francis' conversion? I will give you a hint. It wasn't poverty either. Let me know your answer in the comments. And if you come back next week, I promise to tell you what this virtue was. In the meantime, let us ask St. Francis of Assisi the grace to practice the virtue of patience to an heroic degree. Salve Maria, and hope to see you in the next video.